What's up, homies? This is Doug. Pioneer has changed a little bit with Winota being gone, but that doesn't mean that your sideboard doesn't get to be worked on. Sideboard is often overlooked. Sometimes people know what to sideboard exactly. Sometimes they try to fill it with more combo pieces. Mono green. But today, I am here to hopefully get you some of your sideboard filled out to help you fight against those pesky decks that counter you or just put you in a bad spot. Also, these cards are for Pioneer and Explorer format, and I'm not saying that these are a 4 of, but knowing that you should be putting some of these in your sideboard and how much space you got left will help you determine how many you can and should be playing. First up, we got Containment Priest. This is one of my faves, as it costs a colorless and a plains for a 2/2. It has flash, so you can catch your opponents off guard with their passive ability of when a non-token creature enters the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it. So Coco decks, Phoenix, Sorin Imperious Lord. If they go turn 3, minus to put a, let's just say, vampire, you just put her in, exiles it. Storm the Festival only if they bring out creatures, so if they bring out a planeswalker, she kind of does nothing, but she still makes them miss the trigger because they don't want the creatures to be exiled, or they do and it just gets exiled immediately. Once again, for 2 flash, really great for a 2/2 as well. Up next, we got Nimble Obstructionist. This creature is more of a counter spell. In a way, a counter spell, but it also can be played as a damage dealer against control decks or a chump blocker. Nimble's a 2 colorless for 2 colorless and an island, or a 3/1 flash flying creature. His key feature, or her key feature, is the cycle ability. When he or she gets cycled for 2 colorless and a blue, you get to counter target activated or trigger ability you don't control. Now, this isn't a hard counter to most cards, but when playing against a control deck, there are little options for countering abilities like cycling. I'm not saying there isn't, it's just a little bit harder because not a lot of people run ability counters. So if your opponent bombs it fairy or -3s, you can nimble cycle. Then they can't exactly counter as you would, like negate. But since it is activating ability, they can nimble you, just to keep in mind. Not to mention, since it's a cycle ability of this creature, you end up drawing a card. So if your opponent bombs the fairy, you nimble, cycling, you counter, you draw a card. Not a lot of cards let you negate an ability and let you draw a card. So up next, we got Shaper's Sanctuary. Green right now is a color that does everything. It ramps, it goes wide, it goes big, it goes home with the win. And how better to help it in game 2 or 3 than with Shaper's Sanctuary? Whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you draw a card. Mind you, Shapers resolves before the target. So for example, if your opponent were to go, let's just say, struggle your Land of Werewolves, right? It gives you that saving grace of drawing before and giving you a snakeskin or a heroic intervention, so on and so forth. Not to mention, this enchantment is 1 green, 1 forest. That's it. It's a 1 converted mana cost for a 1 card that lets you draw as many as your opponent has, like not once per turn, not once per creature. As long as they target it with a spell ability, you draw. And that happens a lot. Like, there are some board wipes, like, Farewell. But Shaper's Sanctuary is 1 mana. I'm going to turn 1 this. Are you going to turn 1 Farewell? I doubt it, buddy. And then we got Lithoform Blight. This card is kind of a niche sideboard, so I wouldn't mainboard them. Not to mention, I would like sideboard 2 or 3. But for Colorless Swamp, it is an enchantment that comes in, you draw a card, and enchant land. Enchanted land loses all abilities and has tap to add a colorless, and tap 1, pay 1 life, and add 1 mana of any color. Tap it, pay 1 life, add 1 mana of any color. I said tap 1. I messed up. With Den of the Bugbear, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, Castle Vantris, Castle Logtwain, Hall of the Storm Giants, and so many more currently in Pioneer, this card begins to shine. And no, not because it's foil, but because how easily it can shut down those lands. It gives you a card in return for only 2 converted mana cost. So if your opponent goes Nykthos, you go Lithoform Blight for 2 mana, they tap it for a colorless, so they don't get to Devotion. With that being said, if it is a legendary card or land that you targeted, your opponent can play another one and get rid of the one with the Lithoform Blight. But for 2 converted mana cost to shut down 1 land in general, I think it's worth it. Up next, we have my favorite. For a colorless and a mountain, you get an enchantment that deals 1 damage to each player on their upkeep. So if it's your turn, you take 1 damage. If it's your opponent's upkeep, they take 1 damage. While this may seem like a downside to you against a mono red deck, you wouldn't really be playing this, but that 1 damage to your opponent is worth it. You also get the activated ability, mind you, at instant speed, where your opponents can gain life for the turn. So if your opponent were to revitalize at instant speed, pay 1 mana, they don't gain life. Try to kill it, pay 1 mana, they don't gain life for the turn. So even if it's gone, you still get that passive. On top of that, you get a passive when a player casts a spell without paying mana for them, they take 5 damage. 5 damage is a lot. Which that counters a lot of decks. Not counters like hard counter, but omniscience, like what do you call it? Lotus Field combo decks. Every time they want to cast a card, they take 5 damage. Fires of Invention. If they want to cast their 2 cards, they take 10 damage. If they don't cast anything, they can't cast anything on your turn, so it lets you go ham. And Bring to Light. There's also more cards, but those are the cards that I'm thinking of right now in the meta that like get hard countered by Rolling Vortex. In conclusion, these are Sideboard cards that I feel you should be playing. They are cards that will not automatically give you the win, but they are there to hinder your opponent, help you get the upper hand. They are not ranked from best to worst or strongest to weakest, just how I think I like them. Not to mention they're not also ranked by color or like which color is the best. Hope you enjoyed my list. Let me know what monocolor sideboard cards you think you should be adding to your sideboard or other people's sideboards in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.